Hello, everybody. This is my name is Timothy Gager, and welcome to Virtual Fridays Dire Literary Series. And my guest tonight is Laurette Folk, and welcome. And let me tell you a little bit about her. She sent me her bio, but like what I kind of like to do instead is go right to her website so everyone can see it. And they can read along, and I can paraphrase, and I will paraphrase the bio, but I end up reading the whole bio anyway. So her fiction, essays, and poems have been published in Waxwing, Gravel, Brilliant Flash Fiction, Pacific Review, Boston Globe Magazine, and Best Small Fictions 2019. She's written a couple novels, A Portal, and she's probably going to read, I'm guessing, from her new novel tonight. And she has collections of poetry and flash fiction published by Big Table Publishing, which is a great publishing outfit that I've been associated with. And she is a Pushcart nominee and has graduated from the U Vermont College MFA program. So with that, we will let you take it away.
Okay, thank you, Tim, for having me on Dire, and congratulations for making Dire such a great reading series. You really do a great job, and you should be commended for it. I'm going to be reading from The End of Aphrodite, which is my latest novel. It came out in April. Last April 2020, which is, this year is not exactly a great year to have a book come out, but that's just the way it happened. So I am going to be reading an excerpt from the character Elise, and this is from the chapter Novelty Fades, which was published a while ago in So to Speak, a magazine. Oh my gosh, I can't remember where they're based out of, So to Speak. It's a college in the Midwest. Okay, so without further ado, Elise is a 17-year-old troubled girl who has taken to hitchhiking. And she is the character who disappears, is abducted, or so they think in the novel. She grabbed the chrome handle and opened the door. Well, all right, the blue-eyed man said, and skid the tires, accelerating back onto the road. Elise felt suddenly alive, as if she had stepped out of her life and into a film noir. I'm heading up the coast. Got a cousin in Bangor, the man said. Where did you get this car? Elise asked. Wind rushed through the car and reverberated like a jackhammer when the man accelerated onto the highway. What? He shouted. Elise shouted her question over the reverberating wind. The man howled and accelerated up to 80 miles an hour. Elise's hair whipped at her face. She cranked up the window. Oh, this was my uncle's. He bought it at an auction somewheres in Dallas. He's dead now. The man told Elise his name was Andy. She told the man her name was Sally. This was something she and her friend Tamisia always did, make up false names to tell the drivers. The man swiped his brow with his right shoulder, stared at Elise's knees through the corner of his eyes. Well, shoot, look at what I found on the side of the road, he said, smacking the steering wheel. How old are you, darling? How old are you? Elise asked. I asked you first. Elise smiled. Andy smacked the steering wheel again. She glanced at the watch on his arm, gold-plated with a diamond chip in the middle, and wondered if it was his uncle's as well. Elise interpreted the configuration of the hands as 10:30. The bell to end pre-calculus class was going to ring in 2 minutes. She sat back and laughed. Andy glanced at her and back at the road. He laughed too, swiped his brow again with his shoulder. Elise stretched out her feet and threw her books onto the back seat where there was a duffel bag and a map book of the states. Damn, I like you, Andy yelled. I like you too, Elise yelled back. Listen, Sal, if you got no plans, we could drive to Nova Scotia. What do you say? Elise thought of her mother. how she made suggestions. Elise, perhaps you should think about visiting some schools. Or, Elise, perhaps you should throw a sweater over that top. For the most part, Elise ignored her, but she hated herself for it. Her mother didn't deserve half the shit life threw at her. I'll take a rain check, she said. The motel room smelled of cigarettes and Lysol. Andy took out a bottle of Jack Daniels and fetched 2 Dixie cups from the bathroom. Mother's milk, he said, gulping down a Dixie shot. He went to the bathroom and closed the door. Elise had no interest in the hard liquor. She instead checked every drawer for remnants of patrons past, finding only the Gideon Bible. She sat on the edge of the bed, titillated, wondering how the day would end, what she would tell Tamesia. The door of the bathroom opened again, and Andy came barreling into the room without his shirt. He flexed his lean muscles for Elise. Punch me, right in the pecs. Go ahead. Elise clenched her fist and socked him one. You feel that? Do it again. Elise hit him harder. He clenched his teeth, and Elise laughed at his funny expression. He puffed out his breath and went back to the bathroom and shut the door again. Elise heard the cascade hit the toilet and the toilet flush. He turned on the faucet. She thought of the time she and Tamesia locked themselves in the bathroom, stripped themselves of their clothes, and pretended to pose nude for one another like Playboy centerfolds. Tamesia was the photographer first, and then Elise was the photographer. She clicked an imaginary shutter on Tamesia's white, supple body. Afterward, they sat in the tub, and Tamesia asked Elise if she wanted to kiss her like a boy. Elise had never been kissed on the mouth by anyone then. She remembered just how it felt, the weight of Tamesia's body pressing down on her in the tub, how their skin touched, the gentle tap of her lips like the petal to a flower folding. Tamesia got up and put on her clothes afterward, as if nothing happened. Elise thought about that kiss for years. Elise heard the shower run in Andy's whistle rendition of Band on the Run. She accompanied it with the words in her head, got up and pulled back the cover of the bed, exposing 2 pillows. The blanket was soft, a cranberry color to match the spread, the sheets white, perfectly wrapped around the mattress. Elise took off her jeans, shirt, and bra and tucked herself in the tightly fitted sheet and blanket like a letter in an envelope. She closed her eyes and tried not to think of her mother. Andy came out, a towel around his waist. He walked to the edge of the bed and sat. She looked at him through half-closed eyes. Well, look at you, he said. Look at you. He half smiled, stood up, and moved closer to her. He raised his hand to touch her and picked up the strands of her hair and let them fall. Andy, dripping cool water onto the white, stalled. You do have such fine hair. It must take you a while to wash all of it. He got up, ran his fingers through his wet hair, let the towel fall to the floor. Elise stared at his naked body as he moved about the room, his scrawny legs, his moon-white ass, and half-erect penis. I need a cigarette, he said. You got one? In my purse, on the chair. He fumbled with the contents inside, wavering. Front pocket, Elise said. You girls with all your shit. He lost his balance for a moment and fell sideways onto the bed. The purse dropped and out came her book of poems crafted from the backs of cards, hole-punched and fastened with her mother's yarn. Andy grabbed the book. What's this, little girl? Is this your diary? No, give me that. Can I read your diary, little girl? Andy teased. It's not a fucking diary. Whoa! There must be something good in here, hot damn. Give it to me, goddammit, she said, lunging at him. He held the book above her head. Andy dodged Elise and fumbled through the pages, mocking her by reading some of the words. Elise leapt at him, tore the book from his hands, scratching the skin on his hand with her nails. You crazy little bitch, Andy sneered. Her aggression brought his penis to full erection, and he pinned her to the bed. What you gonna do now? He said, gritting his teeth. You dumb hick. The lids of Andy's eyes lowered. He let her go, and she shimmied from beneath him. He got up, grabbed the towel from the floor, wrapped it around him, and sat in the chair at the table with the half-empty Jack Daniels bottle, balancing himself precariously on the back legs. You hurt my feelings, he said. I what? You hurt my feelings, he repeated slowly. He pointed to his faded tattoo. Honorable discharge, he shouted, wavering and slurring his words. You, he pointed, wouldn't know anything about that, 'cause I reckon you ain't honorable. Elise thought a second about being honorable. Her grandmother was honorable. Her mother was honorable. Her father was not honorable. You're right. I am not honorable. So what? I know girls like you. No, you don't. You don't know at all. You don't have the capacity to know how someone who is not honorable may be a virgin. Andy came down hard on the forelegs. A what? You heard me. You don't act like a virgin, Andy said tentatively. Elise stood up so that Andy had full view of her waif-like body, her small breasts. She pulled the locks of hair around her like a shawl. Andy got up and pressed his face into her abdomen. She felt the scratch of his stubbled skin. He lifted her up, took 2 steps and fumbled with her onto the bed, ran his hand down the curve of her back. Terror shot up her spine like a flare. The cool of the water, she said to herself. The cool droplets of water, the smell of soap, of innocence. He fumbled for her panties, kissed her lips with too hungry a mouth, writhed with deadbeat breath. His sex knocked at her like a blind mole. He collapsed moments later and lay upon her like a dead weight and started to doze. Elise rolled him over, watched his chest rise and fall for nearly an hour. She waited patiently for a change, a signal that life continued even in the altered state. A signal to leave the place and go home. It took the pale diffusion of afternoon light coming through the crack in the curtain to rouse her. She rose, picked up her panties, bra, and dusty jeans, her leather-fringed pocketbook and book of poetry, but before she left, she tore a page from her notebook and wrote a message. No interest in Nova Scotia. How about Mexico? She wrote her number on the back, folded the note, and stuck it in the pocket of Andy's Levi's. Outside, the sun lit up a new world. Elise took out a perfectly good pen she found on the floor of the train and opened to the last page in her notebook. In it, she captured the flock of words orbiting her mind. Fresh eyes flash, take in unexceptional items. Every banal thing has a name. In the mind, a marble finds its grooved track, that same pathetic winding. I get behind the wheel, turn off toward Ferncroft. Yet what I want lies beyond this, where righteous firs flank boreal roots, and the sun also rises. I shall dazzle myself with novelty until novelty fades. She pondered the use of parentheses. Without them, the poem seemed to end too abruptly. She put her pen down. The man next to her in a 3-piece suit had his head on the window pane. His paper collapsed in his lap. He was old, white, and murmured between 2 fat pink lips as he slept. She pushed herself to think of another verse, but nothing came. The train rocked back and forth, and the sleepy, dull-faced passengers jostled and swayed. She was awake, alive. She saw herself juxtaposed with the dull-faced passengers, with their bodies bobbing and shifting to the train's rhythms. She would be nothing like these people. Thank you. Oh, Tim, you're muted.
Well, hi. Thank you so much. That was a great reading, and I guess I'm gonna pick your brain about some of this. So this novel, is this the novel that took you 15 years to write? Correct?
Yes.
So I noticed this, and in the meantime you've gotten books of poetry published. Your prose that you write is very, very poetic. Now, as you grew as a poet in 15 years, did you have to go back and rewrite what you'd started at University of Vermont.
Vermont College.
Vermont.
Yes, yes. I wrote this book. Gosh, there must be 20, 30 drafts to this book. So yeah, a lot of it was perfecting the prose. Yeah.
And your quote first novel, which you started after this, how long did it take you to write that one?
Under a year. Yeah, that one came out. Well, actually, you know, that one had a prior draft that I had published myself. And then I took that draft and I reworked it and had it published by Big Table, and that it really did take under a year. That one just came right out of me. But this one took a while to form.
All right. You're very involved with your heritage in the Italian American community. Let's talk about the Italian American effect. As I'm part Italian, so we have big personalities and we have strong patriarchs in our family. Tell me how that seeped into the theme of the End of Aphrodite.
Well, Etta, who is one of the protagonists, is based on, well, she started out based on my Aunt Lauretta, who was shunned because of a divorce. Her husband had divorced her, and she was shunned because of that. There was always whispering behind her back, and everyone felt so sorry for her, and they pitied her, and that just really struck me as a young girl. And then, when I came of age and had my own dealings with brokenheartedness, I felt full force what she had gone through. I mean, there's just this unwritten code in an Italian American family that, I mean, it's changing now, but this is the way it used to be, that, if you were female, you had to get married. I mean, that was happiness, is marriage, a good man, and a family, and what happens when that doesn't work, so I decided to pursue that character. And she started out, like I said, like my Aunt Loretta, but as the more I wrote her, the more she became like me, and then beyond me. Like I was very taken by that movie Mermaids, and with Cher and Winona Ryder. And Cher is, she's an outrageous character. She doesn't give a shit what people think of her. And she just does whatever the hell she wants. And juxtaposed with the Winona Ryder character, who is this pious do-gooder, and just makes an interesting movie. So, I started to give Etta those attributes, those just sort of a daring personality, somebody that does not submit to the tribe and the tribe's needs, even though she suffers for it. So yeah, it started out dealing with the Italian American issues of, women must get married to be happy, and but then it went beyond that.
Well, Jen Martelli asks that she's happy that you mentioned mermaids, and she feels that water plays a part in so much of your writing, the ocean, floods. Can you talk a little about this?
Well, I think that has a lot to do with the unconscious. Water can be a metaphor for different things in the unconscious, like, for instance, the depth of water could symbolize the depth of the unconscious. The flowing of water is the flowing of ideas. Stagnant water could be a stagnant mind, depression, whereas a running brook could be an active mind, one that's a curious and whatnot. So I think that it reflects mental states.
Well, what's the connection between mental health and creativity?
Um, you know, we all talk about mental health, but I think that the mind as it is, it's just natural to have aberrations. That's what I believe. We say, oh, that's a mental illness, but the mind has its states of aberration. That's a human thing. Addiction, depression, anxiety, you name it. It's part of the brain. It is part of us. So, we like comfortable states of mind, but the best thing to do is realize that we are human, and this is part of us. Sure, you take antidepressants, you do what you can to be comfortable. That's what we want to be. But the best thing for us to realize is that this is integral to who we are.
Yeah, I'd read that it's helped you with your depression, just the creative process. But I want to move along with
Yeah, I just want
your.
to say something about that though. You know,
Okay.
as far as like mental illness and creativity, when you're depressed, you it's like a log jam. If you can like tap into that, you realize that there's a lot of stuff there. I teach literature, and my students, I always get the same comment: why are we always reading this depressing stuff? Because there's a lot in sadness. There's a lot of stuff there. Happiness is pretty straightforward. It's shallow. It can be. This the fulfilling thing too, which is different, but it's pretty straightforward.
Well, this is from Debbie, do you feel that you write best when you're in that uncomfortable state of mind? Is that where depth of writing comes out?
In the beginning, yes. I mean, it's like a portal. Depression for me was a portal. But then once I trained my mind to go to that creative place, I didn't need the depression anymore. I used meditation instead, which is a long story, but for me, it was a rite of passage. It was a portal. I learned how to unjam the logjam, if that makes any sense, and
Oh, yeah.
use all that stuff. But now I don't have to be depressed. I can use meditation. I can write from my dreams. There are other ways to tap in.
All right, tell me a little bit about your journey in writing, because I found this kind of interesting. And when was it that you felt that, okay, I'm going to take this a little more seriously?
I've always written. I started writing, I think at like 8, and I just had journals, and I would write in my journals, and I thought I was going to be a poet, and I wrote these ridiculous little poems. So I've always written in my journal, and it was when I was living in New York City by myself in an apartment that I decided to take it a step further, and I started writing short stories. And then I had met somebody who was very influential in my life, and he had told me, "You have a very strong mind." And I felt like he could really see me for who I am creatively, and was probably the first person who could see me as I am creatively, because I was, when I went to school, I studied engineering, and I graduated. I was in the corporate world. I was extremely unhappy, and Portal to Vibrancy covers all this. But it was in that apartment in New York City when I was alone, and I was unbearably alone. I started writing.
All right. Also, I know that some small bookstores, many of them are suffering. So we like to support the small indie bookstores, but tell me what they mean to you, the small independent bookstore.
Well, the small independent bookstore that comes to mind is I Am Books. I Am Books was a bookstore in the North End that after after I after A Portal to Vibrancy was published, I got in touch with Nicola Arichua of the north of I Am Books in the North End, and he said, "Hey, come on in and read." And Jennifer Martelli and I, two Italian American women writers. I refer to us as unicorns because, well, back then I didn't think there were many of us, but now I see that there is an entire community, which I Am Books help bring together. So to me, I Am Books, the independent bookstore, means community. And it's a place where I can see myself as an artist, but it also involves my past, which is, Italian American, has a lot to do with family and food, but it had virtually nothing to do with art and writing. So the two have been combined through this bookstore, and I think that's really cool. And now I Am had to close because of the pandemic, which was heartache for all of us, but we have online writing groups. The Italian American Writing Association is we hold online readings, and we stay together virtually, and we hope that someday that I Am will resurface somewhere in the North End again, so that we can go out to dinner and have delicious meals and talk and drink wine.
Yeah. You're originally, you said you used to write on your own and you didn't take advantage of the community. So now, besides the I Am Books, you're involved with a lot of people that, I will get to the question. Boy, the car just stalled in the middle of that. Hold on, let me turn it over again. So tell me what kind of advantage is there of being in a writing community, and what are the disadvantages?
That's a really good question.
I know it took me a while to get it.
Well, yeah. So like for years and years and years, I was like writing alone in a room. And then I decided to go for my MFA, and I went to Vermont College. And to me, it was like going to the land of misfit toys when I was a misfit toy. So, finding the writing community, hearing people talk about writing, that was all just part of my development, and just a wonderful part of the process. So, when you're part of a writing community, we all, you contribute. And I'm thinking here of the workshop, where you contribute your work, and people, discuss it, and it can be very painful. I mean, people have gotten really upset, tears and whatnot. So what I've learned is that, you listen to what people have to say about your work, and you take what you need, and then you throw the rest away. Or you put it somewhere where maybe later you can use it. I don't know, but yeah. So you learn, you develop to a certain point where when somebody hits on something, and you take that.
Do you
And
find it?
you know when you don't need.
Do you find it difficult to find an editor or writing partner who really gets you and your work and can give you a good critique? Is that a difficult process?
For me, they always came around when I needed them. It's just the way it was.
Now, your book, wow. So your one version of your book you finished at your MFA program, one of your drafts. Have any of your professors seen the final version?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I let them know, that it was going to be published, and they said, I've had them say, "Oh, that's terrific, congratulations," but I have no idea whether they read it or not, read it or not.
Since you graduated, and then your End of Aphrodite moved along to the next level, what what, in terms of how it changed, what changed the most about that book since it went through the MFA process?
Oh, that's a really good question. When I was in the MFA program, all the characters were women. And the 5 characters that I had thought of in that program remained. Somewhere within those 15 years, and maybe it was like the last 5 or so, I decided that there needed to be a balance. I needed a male character. So I created Michaelis. And I feel like he brings balance to the novel.
Well, that's an interesting take, because you're a lot of the themes of the book are women fighting against the patriarch. So was that still a theme before a male character was involved?
Whether I know it or not, yeah.
Interesting.
Whether
All
it was
right.
conscious or not, it was there. You know, after a while, you see what the unconscious is trying to tell you. And that's one of the things. You learn to give it words. You learn to talk about it. And that's what, came afterwards.
All right, we're going to do a final question. From Debbie, did you ever feel like giving up? And if so, what stopped you from giving up? And
Well, give up on writing? No, never. Give up on pursuing publishing? Well, I've had a long battle with trying to find an agent. And what I've discovered is that I found a way to publish that's satisfying to me without being through an agent and a big house. And I've written another book after this that I think is more commercial, and I do hope to find an agent for that book. But if I don't, I'm perfectly happy publishing with Bordighera again. I think they're a terrific independent press, and I'm glad I found them.
all right, well, thank you so much for being with us. You can find a little bit more out about Laurette Folk at laurettefolk.com, and you can read about her. You can find out about her, a little more about her book, and you can also find out, if you like it, order it from your favorite local bookstore. So once again, thank you for being here, and right now what we're going to do is we're going to shut off the Facebook feed, and then we can breathe. But if you're watching this on Facebook, thanks very much. If you ever want to be part of the open mic or the Q&A, use the Zoom link, but we appreciate you being here and viewing. So we'll say goodnight to you all in the other part of the world.